Among the Aztecs, one humble plant ranked just behind maize and beans, earning a tribute tally of over 160,000 bushels. It survived the Spanish conquest, escaped the Inquisition's ban and fed generations, yet vanished from everyday meals without a law or decree. How did such a powerful staple become known as poor food, quietly erased while its story lingered in the records? The answer reveals what our lost foods say about power, survival, and cultural memory. A single page from the Florentine Codex, written in the 16th century, captures the economic backbone of an empire. In neat columns, Nahuatl scribes tallied the goods that flowed into Tenochtitlan: stacks of cotton mantles, heaps of cacao, and bundles of greens. Among these, one humble entry stands out, a listing for Huauzontle, nestled just after maize and beans. The numbers are precise, even if the units are foreign to modern eyes. Tribute measured in baskets, bundles, or the Aztec count of 20. The sheer scale is unmistakable. In some years, the records show tribute of tens of thousands of bundles, enough to feed cities, enough to demand entire harvests from tributary towns. The historian pauses over the Nahuatl script, finger tracing the glyphs for Huauzontle. The careful handwriting and tally marks reflect more than just agricultural abundance. They reveal a hierarchy of staples. Maize always leads, the emperor's gold, beans and chia follow, each vital for nutrition and ritual. Then comes Huauzontle, counted out in its own right, not as a minor weed or wild green, but as a crop worthy of tribute. Its place on the page is a measure of its worth. No law or decree elevated it to this status. Its presence in the ledger is proof enough. The Codex is not just a record of what was grown and eaten, but of what was valued. Each entry sets the terms of obligation and privilege between ruler and ruled. To be listed meant a crop was essential, woven into the fabric of daily life, recognized by both the tribute payer and the collector. For Huauzontle, this meant an annual journey from field to capital, its worth tallied alongside the empire's greatest riches. These numbers are more than historical trivia. They set a baseline for everything that followed. The tribute ledgers show a world where Huauzontle was indispensable, where its disappearance from modern tables cannot be explained by lack of importance or obscurity. Its quantified presence in the Codex stands as silent testimony to a food once central, now largely forgotten. The historian closes the folio, the ink and paper holding a story of power, obligation, and value. The next chapters will ask how such a staple could fade, not by decree, but by the slow turning of history. In the heart of central Mexico, a field called the milpa comes to life each summer. Rows of tall maize reach for the sky, their roots tangled with bean vines and squash leaves. Between these giants, Huauzontle grows in loose clusters, its red-tinged stems and budding flower heads filling gaps that other crops leave behind. This is not a patchwork of separate crops, but a living system, one that has fed families for thousands of years. The milpa is more than just a field. It is a carefully balanced ecosystem designed by generations of indigenous farmers. Each plant plays a part. Maize offers a sturdy stalk for beans to climb, beans fix nitrogen in the soil, squash shades the ground, and Huauzontle thrives where the earth is poorest. Where maize struggles in dry or alkaline patches, Huauzontle pushes through, its roots drawing up what little water remains. Even in seasons of drought, when corn yields falter, Huauzontle's clusters still fill baskets at harvest. Biodiversity is the milpa's secret strength. Pests that might devastate a monocrop find fewer targets here. The mix of species confuses insects and slows the spread of disease. Huauzontle's bitter leaves repel some pests, protecting the more vulnerable beans and squash nearby. After harvest, the leftover stems and leaves break down into the soil, returning nutrients and keeping the earth fertile for the next cycle. Farmers know the rhythms of this system by heart. Seeds are saved from the healthiest plants and passed down through families, each year's harvest shaping the next. In the Toluca Basin and Michoacan highlands, growers still walk their plots at dawn, checking for the first sign of red on Huauzontle stems, a signal that the buds are ready to cut. The labour is shared. Elders teach the youngest how to pinch off the tender shoots, women gather the clusters into bundles, and everyone helps thresh the seeds when the season ends. In the milpa, Huauzontle is not a weed or a side dish, it is a partner in survival. Its edible buds and seeds fill nutritional gaps left by maize, offering protein and minerals that corn alone cannot provide. When other crops fail, Huauzontle endures, its resilience a quiet insurance policy against hunger. Fields that once yielded tribute for emperors now feed families who remember the old ways, even as cities and highways close in. This web of interdependence is more than tradition. It is a living memory of how food, land and culture are bound together. The story of Huauzontle in the milpa is not just about what was grown, but about the wisdom of growing together. In every handful of soil, in every shared meal, the legacy of the milpa persists, an answer to why some foods endure even when others fade from view. Colonial law left a clear paper trail for what it wanted to erase. Amaranth, with its role in Aztec ceremonies, drew the full force of Spanish suspicion. Inquisition records from the 16th century detail interrogations, confiscations, and threats against farmers who persisted in growing the sacred grain. Yet as those same archives catalogue the forbidden, one name is conspicuously absent. Huauzontle appears nowhere in the ledgers of banned crops or the transcripts of heresy trials. No viceroy signed a decree against it, no friar denounced it from the pulpit. The silence is not an accident. Spanish administrators tasked with rooting out pagan practices focused on the foods they understood as dangerous. Amaranth, transformed into edible idols for festivals, became a symbol of resistance. Its destruction was deliberate and well documented. Huauzontle, by contrast, was rarely used in ritual. It slipped past the gaze of colonial authorities, lumped in with other edible greens, qualities, sold in local markets and simmered in household stews. Botanical confusion played its part. To Spanish eyes, Huauzontle and amaranth often looked indistinguishable in the field. Early missionaries like Bernardino de Sahagun recorded both in their plant lists, but only amaranth was linked to ceremonies the church sought to eliminate. Huauzontle's lack of ritual baggage made it less threatening, and so it remained in the background, quietly cultivated in milpas and kitchen gardens. Legal codes from the period reflect this distinction. While amaranth was named in edicts and targeted by crop inspectors, Huauzontle was not. The Inquisition, so thorough in its pursuit of idolatrous foods, left no case files or witness statements mentioning it. In the absence of a ban, indigenous growers adapted. They continued to plant Huauzontle as part of their traditional intercropping systems, treating it as a practical green rather than a sacred grain. This administrative blind spot had lasting consequences. While amaranth nearly vanished from fields and markets for centuries, Huauzontle endured not by official protection but by omission. Its survival was not a matter of privilege but of being overlooked. In colonial inventories and market taxes, Huauzontle surfaces as a minor good, taxed like any cabbage or turnip, never singled out for suppression. The story is not one of legal mercy, but of bureaucratic neglect. Huauzontle's fate was shaped by what the colonial record keepers failed to notice. Its quiet persistence in the legal shadows set the stage for its later transformation from staple to afterthought, from tribute crop to poor food. The law did not save Huauzontle, it simply forgot to bury it. In the decades after the conquest, Huauzontle's journey took a quieter, more complicated turn. What survived the scrutiny of colonial law began to slip from favour in other ways. By the early 20th century, the story of Huauzontle no longer played out in imperial ledgers or church decrees, but in the language of classrooms, agricultural policy, and everyday talk about class and taste. In rural kitchens, grandmothers still taught children to pinch the buds and simmer them in tomato broth. But in the cities, a different message took hold. School textbooks, revised again and again from the 1920s through the 1980s, made maize and beans the heart of national identity. Huauzontle, along with dozens of other wild greens, scarcely earned a mention. Official curricula, shaped by the Secretaría de Educación Pública, promoted a mestizo ideal: the tortilla, the bean pot, the chili, and the tamal. The foods of the milpa that had once fed empires faded into the margins, their names left out of the lessons that shaped new generations. The stigma was not just in the books. In the markets of Toluca and Michoacán, vendors noticed the change. By the 1950s, customers asked less for Huauzontle and more for white bread and rice. Young people eager to leave the fields for factory jobs called it comida de pobres, poor people's food. The label stuck, passed down with a shrug or a joke. A Michoacan anthropologist recalls interviews in the 1970s when elders confessed to hiding Huauzontle recipes from visiting relatives, embarrassed by their association with poverty. In some families, the knowledge nearly vanished in a single generation. Government policy reinforced the trend. From the 1940s through the 1970s, Mexico's Green Revolution transformed the countryside. New hybrid maize varieties arrived with promises of abundance, backed by state subsidies and international aid. Official figures from the period show a surge in maize yields, driven by fertilizer and irrigation, but at a cost: the displacement of traditional crops. Agricultural extension agents, armed with leaflets and demonstration plots, urged farmers to abandon backwards methods. The milpa, with its interwoven tapestry of plants, was dismissed as inefficient. Huauzontle, hardy but unprofitable, became a symbol of what modern Mexico was supposed to leave behind. Subsidy programs rarely named what they erased. Instead, they rewarded fields planted in pure maize and wheat, offering credit and guaranteed prices for those who conformed. Farmers who persisted with Huauzontle did so out of stubbornness or necessity, not because of official encouragement. In the archives of rural extension offices, the absence of Huauzontle is as telling as any decree. Its erasure came not from a single law, but from 1,000 small incentives, each one nudging it further from the center of Mexican life. The result was a quiet distancing, both cultural and economic. By the late 20th century, Huauzontle was rarely found in urban supermarkets. Its presence lingered in open-air markets, in the memory of elders, and in the hands of those who refused to let go. The story of its disappearance is not one of sudden loss, but of slow burial, layered by stigma, policy, and the relentless march of modernization. An anthropologist from CISAS said that Huauzontle was never banned, it was simply taught to disappear. At the edge of a crowded tianguis, a vendor arranges bundles of Huauzontle on a wooden crate. The buds are wrapped in newspaper, their red stems peeking out beneath the layers. Each bunch carries a story. Some were cut that morning from a family plot outside Toluca. Others brought in by neighbours who trade seeds and harvests. The vendor weighs a bundle on a battered scale, glancing up as a regular customer asks about the price for Lent. Holiday sales are steady, but she explains that younger shoppers rarely stop anymore. Most buyers are older, looking for a taste of what their mothers used to make. The journey from field to market is not simple. Early each season, farmers in the highlands set aside seeds saved from last year's healthiest plants. These seeds are tucked into folded paper packets, sometimes marked with a grandparent's name or a year faded by sun and handling. When the rains come, they scatter the seeds in the poorest corners of the milpa, where maize struggles but Huauzontle thrives. The plants grow tall with little care, their roots finding water where others cannot. Harvest brings its own challenges. The flower heads must be pinched at just the right moment too soon, and the buds are so bitter too late, and the seeds scatter before they can be gathered. Farmers bundle the stalks and carry them by bus or on foot to the market, where vendors like this one haggle over prices set by supply and season. Some of the best buds are set aside not for sale but for seed. At home, families dry them in the shade, gently threshing the seeds into bowls for next year's planting. Through this quiet chain, from seed packet to stall, from vendor's hands to kitchen table, Huauzontle survives even as demand wanes and transport grows harder. The survival of the plant depends as much on memory as on soil, carried forward by those who refuse to let the line end. A grandmother stands at her kitchen table, hands dusted with flour, a bowl of Huauzontle buds waiting nearby. She pinches off the tender clusters and drops them into simmering water, her movements practiced and unhurried. The recipe is simple. Blanch the buds, squeeze out the water, tuck a piece of fresh cheese inside, then wrap each bundle in a cloud of beaten egg before frying. The scent of tomato and hoja santa sauce fills the air. For her, this is more than food. It is a memory carried forward, a lesson for her granddaughter watching from a stool. Across the city, an ethnobotanist studies Huauzontle's profile in the lab. The numbers are striking: high protein for a green, rich in iron, calcium and amino acids that maize alone cannot provide. In drought trials, Huauzontle outperforms most vegetables, its roots drawing moisture from soils where corn withers. The scientist traces these findings back to the milpa, seeing how Huauzontle once balanced the Mexican diet, closing the gaps left by maize. At a restaurant, a chef sets a plate of Huauzontle fritters beside a dish of sautéed quelites. He explains the difference to a curious diner. Quelites are wild greens gathered by foragers, but Huauzontle is a cultivated survivor, once fit for emperors and now rare on modern menus. He chooses it for its resilience and flavour, but also for what it represents: a return to roots, a quiet act of restoration. Each plate is an invitation to taste what nearly vanished, and to imagine what else might return if given the chance. Today, Huauzontle survives in pockets, quiet proof that what we call progress often buries more than it bans. As industrial crops dominate global diets, countless resilient foods remain hidden in plain sight, erased by economics and memory, not decree. Our plates reflect power as much as taste. What other flavours have we lost, and what will we rediscover if we look beyond the supermarket shelf? Share your thoughts below.